So that's what I'm going to talk about today is sleep. And yeah, so again, I really apologize for missing the marketing meeting. Actually slept terribly last night and the night before due to factors outside of my control. So it's kind of ironic to talk about this today. It's also just amazing like how bad I feel after like 2 days of not sleeping well. Like go from like feeling like the best, like just feeling amazing to like feeling like horrible. It happens really fast with sleep. And I don't know if you noticed that in your own life, but I've noticed that in my own life is like a repeating pattern, right? And one of the things I noticed about my life is that, and when I don't sleep well, I tend to get sick. Like the only time I ever get sick is like after a period of not sleeping well. And it's just something I've observed in my own life over the past, 10, 20 years or so of paying attention. And I always just thought it was like, it's just like a quirk of like, maybe it's just my body or it's just how I work or, but then I read this book called Why We Sleep. And it talks about like what actually happens when we sleep and why it's so important that we sleep. And one of the things that happens when we sleep is that our immune function gets better, right? And so when we don't sleep, one of the first things that happens is our immune function gets worse, and that's why we get sick, right? That's not the only reason why we get sick, but obviously if your immune function is not working very well, it's like your first line of defense against getting sick, right? So that was fascinating to read that book and then to like connect those pieces of the science and then my own life and my own experience, right? But the crazy thing about the book is, there's 300 pages of basically research on sleep and its effects on our health. And sleep helps literally prevent every disease you can imagine. So diabetes, cancer, heart disease, stroke, immune functions, Alzheimer's, dementia. Like literally you can go down the list of like every single major disease that faces human beings, and every single cause of death, and sleep makes it better. There's not one thing in your life that's not going to get better if you sleep better, right? And there's not one thing in your life in terms of your health that's going to get that won't get worse if you don't sleep well, right? And again, there's like over tens of thousands of studies on sleep that have backed this up. So it's very well proven now. And so there's a couple of really interesting things about sleep, besides its dramatic effects on our health, is that human beings evolved to have biphasic sleep. And what that means is that if you look at our ancestors and how they slept, they often slept for like 8 hours a night and like 30 to 60-minute nap during the day. And so you can look at people's what's called the circadian rhythm, which is like kind of your level of energy throughout the day based on your hormones. And so what you'll find is that when you wake up in the morning, you start to get this surge of like energy, like, an hour or two after you wake up. Because, you first wake up, sometimes you're like a little bit low and your circadian rhythm starts to pick up and you get a lot of energy. And then in the afternoon, you have a little dip around like between 2 and 5 p.m., depending on where you live. You'll have a little dip in energy, and that's where humans would normally nap in the day. And then again, it rises after that into the evening, and then it dips again at night and you go to bed. So, one takeaway from that is, if you're sleep deprived or not getting enough sleep, or you want to experiment, take a 30 to 60-minute nap in the afternoon when you're feeling tired, and that can help a lot. And then obviously sleep at night, right? Sleep the 8 hours at night if you can. So I thought that was really interesting about biphasic sleep, because that's like the way that we evolved, which means, in my experience and opinion, is like, if that's how we evolved, that's how we should behave, right? Because that's the optimal way to like take care of a human being, right? So napping can help a lot, but then there's another concept called sleep pressure. And so sleep pressure is a concept that scientists use to describe like your urge to sleep, right? So when you wake up in the morning, if you had a good night's sleep, your sleep pressure is going to be like as low as it'll possibly be because you had a good night's sleep, right? So you wake up and you don't need to go back to sleep. Now, if you're sleep deprived and you wake up, right, it's like right now, like I could go take a nap right now, no problem. Like I could fall asleep in a second because I didn't get enough sleep, right? So that's a good sign that you're sleep deprived. So if you wake up in the morning and like an hour later or 2 hours later, like you can go right back to sleep easily, that means you're not getting enough sleep, right? So it's a really easy sign of like you're sleep deprived. Other signs you're sleep deprived, like if you're having memory issues, like, you just find it hard to like remember things. if you're not being as productive as normal, if you're having consistent like health problems that just like don't seem to go away. And yeah, and if you like fall asleep, like you're like watching TV or something, or like, you're doing something else and you're kind of like nodding off and falling asleep, those are all signs that you're not getting enough sleep, that you're sleep deprived. So some of the really interesting things about sleep is that like how we sleep. So what happens is when you go to sleep, there's just kind of two different main stages of sleep. So one is called rapid eye movement, REM sleep. And the other one is called NREM, non-rapid eye movement sleep. And there's like 4 stages of NREM. But basically, when you first go to sleep, you start in the NREM sleep cycle. And what happens in the NREM sleep cycle is that all of your memories from the day kind of get like replayed. So basically, you have like the part of your brain that stores short-term memories from the day, right? And what happens is when you start to go to sleep, when you're in the first stages of sleep, all those kind of memories and neurons from that part of your brain that store the day's memory transfer that data to another part of your brain for long-term memory storage, right? And so this is why if you're not sleeping well enough, you're going to have bad memory, right? Because that process is interrupted. And so you're not able to actually store those memories from the day in your long-term memory. So that's the first stage of sleep, is NREM. And then what happens is you go through cycles throughout the night. So you go through several different cycles throughout the night, from NREM to REM and back to NREM and back to REM. And at the beginning of your sleep cycle, in other words, in the first like 4 to 6 hours of sleep, you're mainly going to do NREM sleep. So you're mostly going to do the NREM sleep where you're taking these memories, and there's other things that happen too. Like it cleans out toxins from your brain. So the brain doesn't actually have like a lymphatic system. So, which means it can't drain toxins, right? So the only way your brain can drain toxins is at night. What happens is like there's like this area between your brain cells that stores cerebrospinal fluid. And at night, those cells like shrink, which means there's extra space in your brain. So all that liquid, well, all the toxins from your cells waste gets drained out of your brain. So that's another big thing that happens. So if you ever notice like you have brain fog or something like that, if you're not sleeping well enough, that's because you have all these toxins built up in your brain. Your body has to be able to clean it out. So the first stages of the night, you get mainly NREM sleep. And then the later stages of the night, you get mainly REM sleep, right? And REM sleep is rapid eye movement sleep, which is where we dream, right? But the really interesting thing about REM sleep is that not only do we dream, but the dreams are not just random. So people used to think that dreams are random, right? But a dream is not random, because the random information is like static on a TV screen. So if you ever turn on a TV and it's like the wrong channel and there's like static, that's random, right? That's a random energy, random signals. A dream is clearly not random, because like you're there, you're doing things, you're experiencing the world, or at least an imaginary world, right? It's very clearly not random. And dreams have a really, really multiple purposes. One of the purposes of dreams is to go back through your experiences, and especially your emotions, and to experience them again and to change the way you interpret them. So what happens when you're in REM sleep and your dream is your muscles are completely inactive. So there's actually this part of your brainstem that shuts off all the signals from your brain to your muscles. So in your dream, you can be punching and fighting and flying and doing all kinds of cool stuff, but your body is literally your muscles are not moving at all, right? So what happens in your brain is actually telling you everything you do in your dream, your brain is literally experiencing and doing, right? So if you're punching in a dream, your brain is literally firing your right arm to punch, right? Like it's literally, like you're literally experiencing that. Everything going on in your dream, you're literally experiencing it, right? The other thing about the dream, this state that's really interesting, is that your emotional center of your brain is turned off too. Or it's not turned off, but it's modulated down, which means that you're going to experience emotions in a dream, right? So you might experience like intense fear or intense excitement or something like that, right? And you're literally going to experience that in your brain, but it's going to shut off the part of your brain that like converts that emotion into an experience. In other words, you can experience like intense emotions in a dream, but it's not going to affect you in the same way it would if you were like in a waking state, right? So in other words, if you were awake and you had a huge fight with your spouse and you were really upset about it, you feel that in your body. You feel like negative effects in your body, right? But in your dream, you can experience that like horrible terrors, horrible things. It doesn't damage your body at all, right? It doesn't have the same physiological effects in your body because your brain changes how it works. But what your brain does is actually processes those emotions. And then when you wake up, you're actually less reactive to those emotions, right? So the brain plays a crucial role in emotional regulation. Which is another thing I notice when I don't sleep well is that I tend to get grumpy and irritable and I'm more emotional, right? And you've probably noticed that too for yourself, right? It's the brain is crucial and or sleep is crucial in helping you regulate those emotions. And so people who have like, traumatic experiences, things like that, sleep helps us process those emotions, right? So what happens over time, so you might have a really painful experience, like maybe you went through a breakup. It was just like terrible. And like right after the breakup, like you felt like your heart was broken and you just felt like so much pain. And then 6 months or a year later, it's like it doesn't faze you as much, right? And the reason is because every night when you're sleeping, you're dreaming, you're having those experiences, and your brain is starting to heal those emotional wounds, right? It's really, really fascinating. So yeah, a lot of people that have, I would say, like emotional problems or outbursts, things like that, it's because they're sleep deprived, right? They're not getting the sleep they need to help them handle and regulate their emotions properly. Another thing that just struck me so much from this book is that like literally the world is a scarier place when you don't sleep. So when you don't sleep, it messes up your emotional regulation and it tunes up your stress hormones. And it literally makes you experience the world as more dangerous, more scary when you don't get enough sleep. So literally, you take the same person when they're sleep deprived and when they've had lots of good sleep, and when they're sleep deprived, they're gonna experience the world as a more dangerous place, as a more scary place, as a place that's less safe, where they're more reactive, right? They're less proactive. They're more in fear, right? So if you've been afraid to like make a change in your life, things like that, like literally just sleeping can help you overcome those fears and overcome those emotions. So I just thought that was really fascinating. The other thing is that it also changes our social interpretations. So you talk about empathy and compassion and, social intelligence and emotional intelligence. You cannot take those lessons from your social experiences and encode them and embody them without sleep, right? It's crucial in that. So when you're sleep deprived, you're not going to be as good at picking up on people's social signals and emotional cues, right? You won't have as much empathy and compassion for people. So that was really fascinating to me too. So how does the body sleep and how does that work? So what happens is at night, your sleep pressure is going to be the most, right? So this is one of the reasons why you shouldn't nap like after like 5 p.m. is because you're going to reduce your sleep pressure and then you're not going to be able to go to bed at your normal time, right? So try to avoid napping like right before bedtime because it's going to mess up your sleep pressure and it's going to take you longer to go to bed. But another thing that happens when you're about to get ready to go to sleep is that your core body temperature has to cool off. So your core body temperature has to get cooler before your body to sleep. It's physiologically impossible to sleep without your core body temperature dropping. And so for human history, you think about evolution, we slept outdoors, right? And so at night it was cooler, right? So it was just the natural cycle of life is that in the day it's warmer and at night it's cooler. The problem is that now we often live in homes with like air conditioning and heating, right? And so if you set the thermostat for the same temperature all day, you interrupt your body's ability to cool off and to go to sleep effectively, right? So good tip is like at night, lower the thermostat, 2, 3, 4 degrees, however much you want. That feels good to you, because that'll help you sleep better. So if you cool off the temperature like an hour before bed, it'll help your body lower its core temperature and get to sleep faster. Other things that can help with that too is, take a shower, take a bath, wash your face with water. Even if it's hot water, like you take a hot shower, it actually helps you cool your core body temperature because when the water evaporates, it drains the heat from your skin. So even a hot shower or a hot bath can still help you cool off your core body temperature before bed. So you don't have to take a cold shower if you don't want to. Some other sleep tips is you should set a schedule based on your natural circadian rhythm, right? So some people are night owls and some people are morning larks. So I'm a morning lark. So like, I can wake up like 5, 6, 7 a.m. and I'm just ready to go and I feel great. But in order to do that, I have to go to bed like really early, like 10 or 10:30 or 9:30, right? And some people are night owls, so they might stay up till midnight, 1, 2 a.m. and sleep much later in the day. And so it's largely genetic. right? And if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, it just makes sense to have, part of the people in our tribe sleeping, going to sleep early and waking up early, and part of our tribe going to bed later and sleeping later, because then we have more people awake and more hours to protect the village, protect the tribe, right? And if you live in a family where some of you are night owls and some of you are morning larks, it can cause problems, right? It can cause conflicts. So you want to, just understand, what type are you and what's best for you, and try to, set your sleep schedule based on what's really best for you. Some other interesting things is like, teenagers. So for teenagers, what happens is their circadian rhythm goes way. So when you're a kid, you need to go to bed earlier, like when you're a baby, right? So you notice for kids, like young babies, if you're, parents, like Anna's nodding her head, yeah, they go to bed really early, right? Like way before you do. And then what happens is as they grow up and to become a teenager, their circadian rhythm swings the other way, and they have to go to bed way later, right? They're not even tired till like 1, 2 in the morning, right? And one of the reasons for this is because as people become teenagers, they're starting to become adults, right? And they need time to socialize amongst their own group. And so in tribes, all the teenagers would kind of hang out like at 1, 2 in the morning, and that'd be like the only time they can hang out away from the parents, right? And they can create their own culture and learn from each other, right? And then as you become young 20s adult, is your pattern goes back to normal, and that's kind of your adult sleeping circadian rhythm, usually at a little bit earlier time than when you were a teenager, right? So teenagers need lots of sleep. And there's lots of studies in the book about how starting school at like 7 a.m. for a teenager is like the worst thing you could do for their health and for their memory and for their ability to learn and all that, right? So that's really fascinating. So if you've got kids, try to pay attention to like their sleep cycle is going to change, and try to be, try to like support them in getting the best sleep they can and doing what's best for their bodies. So understand if you're a morning owl or a morning lark or a night owl, and try to set your sleep schedule based on that. It's best if you go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time every day. Like that's the ideal scenario. And of course, if you're doing that based on your actual circadian rhythm, that's the best case scenario. You're gonna get the best sleep, right? Consider a 30, 60-minute nap if you need it, around 2 to 5 p.m. Again, it's based on your schedule when you think is best, and you'll feel it. Like if you're feeling in the afternoon like you're really tired, take a short nap. It can help you a lot. Keep your room colder at night, we talked about. And then eliminate like noise and things that might wake you up. So like if you live in a busy city and there's like traffic noise and stuff, that stuff kind of like, even if you don't notice it waking you up, those noises can still interrupt your sleep. So there's actually things that can interrupt your sleep that you won't even notice. So you won't notice it, but your sleep will actually be diminished, right? So one thing that can help is like a white noise machine. Some people use like an air filter. There's actually like machines they call white noise machines, or a fan. There's some kind of pattern of noise that you put in the room that blocks out the outside noise and interruptions. It can be really helpful, especially if you're in a city or somewhere where it's kind of noisy at night. The other thing is you should avoid screens and blue light at night. So interesting about humans is that we evolved from ancestors that lived in the water. And in the water, most of the light is blue because the water filters out the rest of the light, right? So when you're in the water is blue because it filters out the blue light. So our brains evolved to be most sensitive to blue light. And what that means is if it's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and you're looking at a computer screen which has lots of blue light, or if you're looking at like an LED light bulb which has lots of blue light, then it's going to activate your brain and activate hormones that keep you up and keep you energized, right? Because your body's going to think it's still daytime when it's not. And that's going to make it much harder to fall asleep and much harder to sleep well. So there's a couple things you can do. So there's like an app for your computer called Flux, and you can install that on your computer, and it'll like at night it'll remove all the blue light from your computer screen, so you can still work at night on a computer, and it won't mess up your hormones so much. You'll be able to sleep a lot better. There's a similar option for your phones. If you have a smartphone, there's similar options. You can change it to like nighttime settings so that you don't have the blue light in your phone at night. But generally speaking, you should try to avoid like computer screens right before bed, because it's going to mess up your hormones and make it harder to sleep. And then if you use like the light in your room at night, like I changed my light bulbs, instead of like LED light bulbs, which have lots and lots of blue light, you can change like an incandescent bulb, or there's even like reddish orange bulbs that have the warmer light that's not blue light. So you can have those at night and like read at night with those lights, and it won't mess up your hormones so much to be able to sleep better. Okay, the other thing is you should avoid caffeine after the morning. So caffeine has a 7-hour half-life, which I didn't realize that. Like, that's really long, which means that after 7 hours of drinking coffee or caffeine, half of that caffeine is still going to be in your bloodstream, in your body, right? Which means that if you want to get all the caffeine out of your system and you drink caffeine after noon, you're not going to be able to do that before bedtime. And it's going to mess up your sleep. So if you're going to do caffeine, definitely I would avoid it after noon, because it's going to mess up your sleep. And then the other thing is alcohol. So alcohol is incredibly bad for sleep. So alcohol is actually, it's not a stimulant. It's the opposite of stimulant. It's a sedative, right? And so the interesting thing about alcohol is, like, you know, when you drink alcohol, the first like hour or two or three, like, you start to feel really good. Like you have less inhibition and you're kind of more energetic. And it's interesting, a sedative makes you feel more energetic, right? Because what it does is it shuts down the prefrontal cortex first, like your executive function, which helps regulate your emotions. So your emotional center of your brain kind of gets freed up to just do whatever it wants, right? And so you'll be more impulsive and having more fun, and you'll be more emotional and maybe more energetic. But then what happens is that the alcohol starts to affect different parts of your brain, starting from the front to the back, kind of. And so what happens is, you know, later on in the night, if you've had some alcohol, you might be more sleepy. So you'll find it easier to actually go to sleep, right? The problem is it's not the same kind of sleep. It's literally not the same kind of sleep at all that you would have in a normal night's sleep. And so if you have alcohol before bed and you go to sleep with alcohol in your system, you're going to have really bad sleep. So you might seem like you fell asleep just fine. You might seem like you slept just fine, but it's really diminished sleep. So, and it messes up your memory. So they've done all these studies, and actually, like, if you drink alcohol anytime within 1 week of studying something or learning something, it diminishes your ability to remember that by like 60%. So like, if you study for an exam like today, and 6 days from now you have a night of drinking like 2 or 3 drinks, it diminishes your memory by like 60% on any of those given nights, which is just like mind-boggling, right? Because so what happens when you sleep is, like, yeah, you process all those memories from today, but you also are processing memories from the recent past too, right? So it's like a process. Like, every night you need to keep processing memories to like store them appropriately. So alcohol does all kinds of other really bad things to your sleep, and I'm not gonna go into all the detail here, but I would definitely avoid alcohol before bedtime if I were you. The other thing that can help a lot is like a bedtime routine. So before you go to sleep, try to get like a routine in place. Like, you know, let's say you want to go to bed at 11. So like, maybe you start your routine at like 10 or 10:30. Like, you know, you're going to probably brush your teeth, you know, floss, you know, whatever you want to do. Maybe you read before bed. Try to have a set routine in place. So we talked about like habits before, right? And like how important habits are. So if you have a habit routine that you do every night before bed, it literally like programs your brain and your body to get prepared to sleep well, right? So think about the opposite. Let's say you don't have a routine for bed. You know, you're taking phone calls right before bed, you're watching TV or playing computer games or doing other things that are really going to stimulate you. It's going to be a lot harder to go to sleep, right? It's going to be a lot harder to go to sleep faster and to sleep as well. So think about like creating an actual routine for yourself for at least like 30 minutes before bed, where you do things you know are going to get you ready to actually go to sleep and have a good night, right? So maybe it's like reading a story to your kids, or having a conversation with your spouse, or reading a little bit, or brushing your teeth, or whatever makes sense for you. But set up that routine, and it'll help you have that standard bedtime and have that whole process in place. That'll just make it a lot easier for you to be healthy and happy. And then the other tip is to avoid the alarm clock if you possibly can, right? And since we all work from home, most of us probably can do that. So the problem with the alarm clock is that it literally causes an immediate stress response. So if you wake up like 7 a.m. to an alarm, it causes an automatic response in your body, neurologically, neurophysiologically, that you cannot avoid, right? And it's going to spike your stress hormones like first thing in the morning, which is, you know, not the ideal way to start the day, right? So one of the fascinating things about reading this book to me is just like how brilliant our bodies are, like how brilliant our minds are. Like, you know, no human being could possibly design some machine like so complex and so amazingly fantastic as the human body, right? And so your body knows what to do. Like your body knows when to sleep. It knows how to sleep. It knows how to store all the memories in here. It knows how to do, like, you know, how to have dreams and how to process emotions and how to do all these things and how to heal your immune system. And right, it knows how to do all these things automatically. So you don't have to, like, there's nothing you can do to make it better, really, right? Like it's going to function on its own. You just have to allow it to function well, right? And so if you allow yourself to wake up when you're actually naturally wake up, it's going to be like the best night's sleep you could have, right? And so if one night you sleep for like 9 or 10 hours, that's because your body needed to, right? It's not because you're lazy, right? You know, sleeping extra does not mean you're lazy, right? So human beings have different needs for sleep. So the vast majority of us need between 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep a night. There's some very rare people, like 1 in a million people have this crazy genetic change where they only need like 4 hours of sleep a night. But that's like 1 in a million people, literally. So it's probably not any of us, right? Right. So most of us need like 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep. And here's the thing, though, is like there's a difference between sleep and sleep opportunity. So if you're in bed for 9 hours, you might only sleep for 8 or 8.5 hours, right? So you have to think about that too. Just, you know, just because you go to bed at midnight and you wake up at 8 does not mean you got 8 hours of sleep. You probably only got 7 or 7.5, right? So take that into account as well when you're considering that. So the other thing I thought was really interesting about REM sleep is that that's how we store like muscle memory, and that's how we learn like behaviors and patterns, right? So let's say you're like, you know, you're practicing like free throw shooting in basketball, right? That's a different kind of memory than like recalling facts about sleep, right? And that happens during REM sleep. So if you're trying to learn something like physical, you're trying to learn habits, patterns, sports, things like that, that all happens during REM sleep. And again, most of your REM sleep happens at the end stages of the night. So, so if you're not sleeping like the full 8-9 hours that you need, then you're interrupting that REM sleep, which is going to diminish your ability to, regulate your emotions and to learn habits, behaviors, patterns of acting and behaving. And also, it's going to limit your ability to, read other people's emotions and social signals and things like that. So that's another reason why it's so important to get like a full night's sleep, is because you need the whole package that nature has for us, right? So if you interrupt your sleep in like the early beginning of the night versus at the end of the night, it's going to have different impacts on you, right? Because it's going to either impact most of your NREM sleep or your REM sleep. And neither of them is good, right? So just try to do your best. And, another thing I've learned about sleep just personally is that, it doesn't help to be like upset about it, right? It's like if someone wakes me up in the middle of the night, thinking in my mind, oh no, they woke me up and I'm not going to sleep well and I'm not going to feel good. And like going through all that mental stuff doesn't help at all, right? That just makes the problem way worse, right? So, none of us is perfect, and you're never going to get, a perfect night's sleep every night for the rest of your life, right? But you want to do the best you can, and don't stress out if you can't, right? The things are going to happen. And so, if you wake up in the middle of the night, just think, okay, great, I woke up and I'm going to just go back to sleep. You don't have to worry about it or stress out about it, or think about it too much. So I hope this is helpful for you. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on sleep and whatever you